Hello, Malik Currington here, Family Budget Fisherman. Thank you for tuning in. Well, I have some results for you. This long-awaited on-the-water review after I put in 24 hours of on-the-water fishing with this rod, the 13 Fishing Defy Black Generation 2 spinning rod. This is the 7'1" medium heavy that I used, and I want to share all of it with you. Let's talk about it. Oh, got him. Barely hooked. Barely hooked. All right, so let's get right into it. I want to share with you three aspects that I think comprise the bulk, the overwhelming perception of this particular rod. Number one, the design. Number two, the performance. And number three, the sensitivity. Those three areas, when we go into them, will give you a very good sense of what this rod can and cannot do and whether it was an improvement over the previous generation. Oh, before I get into that, let me mention to you the way I tested it. When I say I tested it for 24 hours, I mean actually casting and retrieving. Most of the time I took this rod alone with me. There were several times where I actually took this rod along with the Fate FT that I'm also reviewing, but I made sure to document those time periods separately. So I accumulated 24 hours of me casting and retrieving this rod. And to make it fair, I made sure that I used 13 Fishing's own Creed GT 3000 reel to give it the best opportunity to do its best work, because the reel and the rod are made by the same manufacturer. Okay? So now, the line is Fins Fishing 2-pound test diameter, 15-pound test break strength, and the leader material is Berkeley fluorocarbon, 15-pound break strength, and as always, I use a snap. I threw jerk baits, top water baits, both frogs and torpedoes. My torpedo ripped it. I just have to let you know. I also threw Ned rigs, worms of all types. Just pretty much named the top 5 types of worms to throw, and I threw those, as well as the top crawl baits, lipless crankbaits, shallow divers, square bills, medium divers. I pretty much threw it all. Spy baits. I threw spy baits, and I had fun throwing spy baits. I'd have to say I had particular fun throwing spy baits with this rod. So I threw a large range of baits. I fished this before sunlight, and the latest I fished this was around 10 o'clock, both on shore and by boat. So I really gave this rod a really good opportunity to do its best work. As for the design, overall, the design is okay. Overall, the design is okay. The rod is actually lighter than its predecessor, which I have to my immediate left here. You're right, looking forward to me. And it is easy to hold. I have to admit, it's easy to hold. It wasn't that the previous model was harder to hold. This is easier to hold. I do like the fact that there's more to grip in the front than the previous model. The previous model doesn't have this much handle to hold on to. So that is one great aspect. The other great thing about this rod, I have to admit, is that it was easy to cast. It was actually, I think I found it easier to cast than the previous model. When I say easier to cast, I mean in terms of the whippiness. This is less whippy than the previous model. It's a slightly stiffer rod, and it's noticeable. That was appreciated. My criticism, I'm going to start off right off the top with the criticism. And I'm going to bring in the other rod just to kind of show you the difference there. My finger, my baby ring finger is a size 11. I want to show you something. See that there? I'm hitting the roof. But I just want to show you this. This is me trying to get it. This is the first guide right here, okay? Now, I'm going to pull out the previous model. This is the previous model. Let me make sure this is the medium. Let me make sure that I get the medium heavy. Medium heavy. This is the medium. That's another medium. This one must, I should be able to tell. The difference between the medium and the medium heavy in the previous model is this ring. This ring right here shows that it was the medium heavy. Now watch this. All the way down. Right there. Okay? Now, while this was easier, the current model was easier to cast, noticeably. Not that the previous model was difficult, but noticeably. No matter what adjustments I made, the previous model casts at least 10 yards further than the current model, primarily because this eye is too small to deal with the line as it comes off of the reel spool. Plain and simple. It is a design flaw. I'm just going to be straight up. This is a design flaw, and it will compromise the casting. It compromises the retrieve, and it compromises landing the fish. Did I land fish? I landed fish. Okay. But I did notice how much tougher it was to do just that because of this right here. This guide needs to be a third larger than what it is at the least. These rods were both $60. Okay, the previous model and the current model. If they did not change the guides at all, the other problems I could accept. But that one right there, I'm just going to be clear. It's this close to a deal breaker. And when I say that close, This is 13 Fishing's current Defy model on the spinning side. And there may be some who just really like this series. But for me, this close to a deal breaker. I'm going to keep this rod, but that close. The other thing that I personally do not like is where the hook keeper is. I know that I can adjust, or I can put I could put a different rod line keeper or hook keeper on here, but just where it's designed, that's an aesthetic issue in terms of the design. And as far as the foam, the rod looks better in natural sunlight than it does, for example, in these studio lights. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 big studio lights right here, right now. And this rod does not look as good in these studio lights as it does in natural lighting. But having said that, this is still, the previous model is just a much better look than the current model. Okay. I mean, you could take a look, and I know what I just mentioned, but I'm still going to show it to you. I want you to take a look at the cork. This is the previous model. This is the current model. Tell me aesthetically which one looks best to you. Now, there's some of us who don't really care, especially for a $60 rod, but it's notable. The other thing that I do like about the current model, and I'm going to criticize 13 Fishing for not explaining it. There is a wrapping that goes all the way up this rod, all the way up to the tip. And it makes the rod a little stiffer and definitely stronger. And I can tell the difference. They don't explain that wrap, but the wrap is cool. It does not exist on this rod here. This is a naked rod, but this has this wrap on it. The other thing is, in terms of performance, I told you, the design flaw compromises the performance of this rod. I found throwing, in particular, baits that shook. So any of our chatterbaits or square bills or shallow divers in particular, any bait that shook. When I threw my rattle traps, it was a little bit more difficult to control because this kept throwing them off in the retrieve. So I had to overperform. Now, if I'm throwing jerk baits, if I'm throwing tubes, anything that doesn't require a shaking motion, it was fine. Throwing finesse baits of, power finesse and finesse, this rod was okay. Well, it was okay. It was better than throwing reaction baits, the ones that shook, anything that had a movement to it. So that is on the performance. Sensitivity, this is a more sensitive. I can feel things better on this rod than I could on the previous model. Really nice. But the design flaw overwhelms the benefit in the sensitivity and the strength of the rod. It's overwhelming. I can deal with the way the rod looks. I can deal with the hook keeper, but this is where my major problem is. Who is this rod for? Interestingly enough, I noticed that these two rods are not for the same category of individual, although this is the previous model and this is the current model, both price point the same way. This model, the previous model, was for an individual who is a beginner, person who's had some experience but not quite significant experience, or a person who just reaches that level of experience but doesn't want to use some of the more expensive equipment in small ponds and other places like that. They may want to take them to some other big places. It's like we all have this thing where we got our, you wear your good shoes to certain places and you wear your kicks to other places. It's like that, or your better clothes and all that. This rod was for that. This rod right here is for beginner fishermen and fishermen who want to be introduced to 13 fishing, period. Nothing more. Unfortunately for me, this will be the only Generation 2 rod that I purchase. And just to show you how committed I am to the Defy series, I have 2 further away from me that are broken. And I replaced them. And I probably should have gotten them and brought them over here as proof. These are the ones that I have remaining. And as you can see, I used them. Here is a new, or I should say, it's not new because it's a little older. This is the unused medium heavy 13 fishing previous model right here, Generation 1, and here is the used one. Okay, I still use them. There are certain places that I like to go where I'm not going to take some of my more expensive equipment, or when I have people who are new. This is the medium. Notice there's no ring there on both of them. This one has not been thrown, nor has it been paired. It's brand new. And this one is used. Okay, so I have 4 in use, and I will continue to use those. I do not have and will not get more than this one, especially until this is fixed. My hope is that this can be changed and something can happen with this. But this right here has such an overwhelming degradation on the overall use of this rod that this will be the only one that I purchase. And I did purchase it. Although I got a deep discount, I did purchase it. So my recommendation is, if you're just looking to get started and you want to be introduced to 13 fishing, this is a good rod to introduce yourself to 13 fishing. I would not go too much lower than this, because the models below this, like the Defy Silver and below, there is no consistent action of baits that are thrown. There's no consistency from cast number 1 to cast number 10. It just isn't. And it's because of the design of the rods themselves. I believe that even beginner fishermen who are going to take the sport seriously need to start here if they're going to do it, and you just like 13 fishing products. Let's say you can't afford the Omen, or you can't afford the Envy or the Muse, but you want to start somewhere, or even the Fate Black Gen 3, which is a $100 rod. Start here at this $60 price point. If you are not that individual, or you want to experience 13 fishing and you believe you can get a really, really good deal, jump as far into the Omen as your beginning rod as you possibly could. If you are a person of some experience up to a pretty experienced person, even those of us who consider ourselves almost expert level, as you know, I own and have just bought another Omen, really like those rods. So I want to hear from you. I want to know what you think. I want you to react to my review. Please comment below. Let me know how you're feeling. Let's talk. Okay? But by no means spend any money breaking your family's budget trying to buy any of this equipment. Do everything within the law and good ethics to break your personal best. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and be safe out there on the water.